Hi everyone, I'm Meteorologist Jason Adams. I want to give you the latest update on Hurricane Irma. We promised you yesterday that as power became a big problem here across the state, where we've now had 4 million people in the state of Florida alone now without power, that we would be delivering these updates to you on your smartphone through our Facebook Live app. So this is the latest. Let me get you in here to the hurricane because it now has been downgraded to a Category 1 storm. We're still looking at winds at 85 miles per hour, and right now the center is just to the north of Polk County and just to the east of Citrus County. So it's almost out of our viewing area as it continues to move up the spine of the peninsula, but its wind's still at 85 miles per hour, and we're also looking at gusts up to 100 miles per hour. Now, over the last 3 to 4 hours, we've had the worst of Irma. We've had winds up to 100 miles per hour, and unfortunately, Polk County really have taken it on the chin as the center of the storm actually moved up through eastern Polk County or western Polk County and eastern Hillsborough County. We've had reports of up to 90 mile per hour winds in Clearwater, and also at Fort DeSoto we've had reports of about 94 mile per hour winds. So the forecast verified pretty well as far as the wind gusts, 85 to 95 with a few over 100. And unfortunately the center ended up being, instead of on the coastline, it moved inland by about 25 miles, and that's what put Polk County under an extreme wind warning last night for those 100 mile per hour winds. So here's the latest radar. Notice the storm now again continuing to move to the north up I-4. It looks like the center of circulation somewhere over eastern Pasco County or maybe eastern Hernando County, and it's continuing to move quickly towards the north-northwest at 15 miles per hour. So what this means for us is over the next few hours the winds are really going to start to calm down, and this is great news for those of you inland who picked up some of the strongest winds as the storm ended up tracking inland. The bad news is we're now starting to see the storm surge flooding that we were expecting. Yesterday we had the winds going offshore, so that kept a lot of the water out of the bay and off the Gulf Coast. Now we're seeing the winds moving back in onshore, and even though the center's moving away, we're still looking at gusts over 50 miles per hour, and those 50+ mile per hour winds are now pushing surge into Pinellas County, also Sarasota and Manatee counties. Also the bay now starting to fill back in as we've lost a lot of that water. So watch out for those evacuation zones. Even though the winds are calming down just a little bit, stay in your safe spots because of course the flooding, the surge is coming in pretty quickly. Yesterday in Naples, they had over 7 feet of water rise in an hour and a half. That's how fast the surge came back in once the storm system moved north of them. So that's what we're looking at right now. Again, a Category 1 storm. Pressure's continuing to rise, meaning the storm will also continue to weaken, and gradually we're going to start to lose a lot of these winds that we've been seeing out there that have been very, very strong over the last few hours. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post them here. If you're just joining us for the first time, I'm going to go ahead and give you another update. We have 4 million Floridians now without power here due to Hurricane Irma. Irma's now Category 1. Here's the latest radar. The center of the storm now in eastern Hernando and eastern Pasco counties, continuing to move to the north. We've lost a lot of that heavy rainfall that we had yesterday and last night, but the tropical storm force winds are still with us. It looks like the hurricane force winds, for the most part, have calmed down. We're still looking at some gusts up to around 70, 75 miles per hour, but the worst of the storm has thankfully moved up to the north as far as winds go. Winds will slowly calm down over the next few hours. We're still expecting tropical storm force winds through most of the morning and even into the early afternoon, especially north of Interstate 4. And then as we head towards later today, we're really going to see this system finally pulling away and not allowing us to have any more issues with it. But be careful with the surge. All day yesterday, winds were offshore. Now winds all day today are moving onshore. We also have high tide coming up here between 5 and 6, and that's when we're going to be looking at our best chance to see water rises of a good 2 to 4, perhaps 5 feet.
So,
any questions?
Yeah, a lot of people are asking about specific areas,
sure.
But how long would you say it's taking for the storm to clear through a county?
Well, the good news is it's moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour. So gradually, I'd say over a 2 to 3 hour period, if you still are under the center of the storm, specifically talking about those of you in Citrus, Hernando, Pasco counties, and then eventually over to Sumter County too, this is moving pretty quickly. So I think by 4 and 5 a.m., a lot of this is going to be out of here. But the tropical storm force winds are so broad with this storm, even as it's weakening, we're still going to hold on to those winds through at least noon today, if not a little bit beyond that.
Okay, and there's a couple people here asking still about Jose. Is that something that we need to be worried
Thankfully,
about?
as it stands right now, no. Jose is still out into the Atlantic. What's happening is the the ridge that ended up steering Irma up our way is actually breaking down a little bit, and then there's another ridge developing farther east. All that means is that it's going to basically lock Jose in place. Hopefully it could weaken it, Maybe it turns back to towards the Atlantic coast as we go into the next few days, but right now, at least for the next week, we're not having any impacts from Jose here. And of course, if that were to change and we start to see things shifting back towards us, we'll let you know. But fingers crossed that is definitely not what happens.
So where it stands right now, where is the eye of the storm at?
So right now the center is located, I'd say close to Brooksville, just to the east of Brooksville, heading up towards Crystal River. So again, mainly almost completely out of our area, but notice we still have 59-mile-per-hour wind gusts in Bartow. Look at Clearwater, 59-mile-per-hour gusts. So we're still in the tropical storm force winds, even though the center is now again up towards Interstate 75. Perfect. The radar zoomed in right when I needed it to. So Brooksville, Sugar Mill Woods, Floral City. This is where the strongest core of the winds are right now. That's where we could still see winds as high as 85 miles per hour. That's the advisory from the National Hurricane Center that came in at 2 o'clock. But notice around the Tampa-St. Pete area, the Bay, Pinellas, Hillsborough, and also over Polk County. Look at Polk County. This is so good to see because remember, last night, many of you were trying to sleep through the storm, but you weren't able to because that's where we had the core of Hurricane Irma move through. We had a high wind warning, excessive wind warnings for those extreme winds up to 100 miles per hour. And unfortunately, Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips, he's been here all night. He's still here this morning. He's saying that when we wake up and we start to get daylight hours happening, he thinks he's fearing that we're going to see a lot of damage in the Polk County area as they look to be the ones that have taken the hardest hit in our area. Also, I want to say, for those of you down towards, we'll say the DeSoto County area and even towards, let's say the Sebring region, all those locations, you all were on that eastern eye wall too. So unfortunately, it looks like a lot of damage happening there.
So here's a good question. What about people that have evacuated? They were in evacuation zones, they left. When is it okay for them to come back?
You got to wait till your county officials and your emergency management officials allow you to come back because now they're waiting for daylight plus these tropical storm force winds to calm down so they can actually get in and start assessing what happened themselves. Now, if you're in one of those surge zones and you were evacuated zones A or B because of the coastal flood threat, you probably won't be able to get back in there until our winds turn offshore again or they really lighten up to allow the surge levels to kind of creep back out towards the Gulf of Mexico. So for those areas that are expected to see the surge, you probably won't be able to get in at the earliest late today or tonight, perhaps even into Tuesday. For those evacuation zones with your mobile homes, if you were just evacuated because you live in a mobile home, the county should get out and assess it today. Hopefully, if you don't have any significant damage and they can get you back into your homes pretty quickly, it should be today. But again, it ultimately depends on how much damage and what your emergency management officials say for your specific county and locations.
Okay, and probably the last thing here, was it unexpected the track that this ended up taking and
Not at all.
The strength that it ended up at?
Not at all.
Kind of
If you were watching myself and Shay and Dennis and Greg, we always focused on the cone. We kept saying the center line is here, it shifted west, it shifted east, but we kept saying whether it shifts west or east once it gets up here, the impacts for us are all the same. We're going to get the 75 to 90 mile per hour winds with gusts up to or over 100. We're going to get 8 to 10 inches of rain, some spots even more than that. Everything happened, but the track, instead of being on the coast like the National Hurricane Center had it focused yesterday, it was inland by about 25 to 30 miles, but it was within that cone that we were watching, and we kept saying, don't focus on the center line. It's within the cone, so it could be anywhere in this. So maybe for those of you along the immediate coast, it wasn't as bad as it was expected because that center line had it over the immediate coast, but I think overall the forecast verified pretty well with the National Hurricane Center, considering how poorly the forecast models were doing with this system, even as it was out into the Atlantic. So overall, I think it was okay. I just wish it would have stayed a little more offshore so none of us had to deal with it, but with that 25-mile jog inland, eastern Hillsborough, western Polk, and then those areas in eastern Sarasota and Manatee counties too, those are the ones that got hit the hardest. So again, we'll continue to update you guys through the morning. I know a lot of you are without power. We'll try and do these updates frequently. That way you can check it on your smartphone. You can also watch our live streaming. Right now we're on air, but of course if your power's out, you can't see us on air. But if you download our app, we have the live streaming link there that can get you what you're seeing on air on your smartphone. You can also, if you don't have a smartphone but you do have internet access, you can try and go to abcactionnews.com. That's also a way that you can pull up our live streaming as well. So once the 5 o'clock update comes in, we'll most likely do another update then. Again, this is the 2 o'clock update. Irma now down to a Category 1 storm, continuing to move out, continuing to weaken, but we still have several more hours to go of tropical storm force winds with gusts up to 60 miles per hour. That's expected to last through at least sunrise, if not beyond, and then we'll start to see things getting a lot better for us later today. I'm meteorologist Jason Adams. We'll have more updates coming up for you guys. Stay safe.